In this video, I'm going to share an amazingly powerful and simple story framework that can help you structure your documentary from start to finish. And I'll show you not only how it maps to Oscar-winning documentaries, but also how it helped me achieve outsized success when I was just starting out making documentaries, allowing me to get one of my first ever short docs published by National Geographic, The Atlantic, the American Documentary Film Festival, and NBC. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Austin Meyer. I'm a documentary filmmaker, National Geographic Explorer, and on this channel I share the field-tested skills, mindsets, and lessons that have helped me on my journey as a documentary filmmaker. The framework I want to share with you today is called the story spine. When I'm working on documentaries and I feel lost figuring out who or what to film, or I can't seem to get a handle on how to arrange the pile of footage that I've captured in the field, the story spine is what I come back to. Story spine helps me get grounded. It helps me remember the tried and true beats of a compelling story. And what I love about it is that it gives a bit more guidance than the whole beginning, middle, end, act 1, act 2, act 3 frameworks. But it also is not some exhaustive screenwriting guide that makes filmmaking structure feel like a mathematical proof. I first learned about the story spine while studying and performing improv theater. The framework, created by playwright and improv actor Ken Adams, was originally meant for improvisers, but when I came across it, I immediately saw how useful it could be for the work I was doing in the documentary and journalism fields. After all, what is documentary filmmaking if not improv? We're making the best out of what we have available to us, we're adapting on the fly, and we're creating a story with no script. Just like in improv, us documentary filmmakers thrive when we have just enough structure, enough to keep us on track, but not too much where it inhibits our spontaneity and creativity. That is the story spine. The story spine is 9 steps, so let me get out the whiteboard and I'll walk you through it. The first step is once upon a time. This is where you set the stage. It's where you introduce the main character or characters in your documentary film. But it's not just about the main characters. It's also where you introduce the world that we're in. What is the context for this story? Where does it take place? In the Oscar-winning documentary Free Solo, for example, the very first shots of the film are Alex Honnold free soloing in Yosemite. Set to quotes about what free soloing is, how dangerous it is, and how his van lifestyle impacts his dating life. That is the stage for the film. All right, step 2, and every day. This step allows you to establish the status quo of your characters' lives. It's where you get a bit deeper into revealing their daily routine, their habits, their relationships, and their internal emotional state. The goal is to help viewers understand the world your characters inhabit and give them a baseline from which to understand the changes that will soon follow. In Free Solo, this section goes through about minute 15 as we get deeper into Alex Honnold's psyche. We learn about all he has accomplished, although he has never free soloed El Cap yet. We learn that he is trending, as he calls it, towards having a girlfriend, although he will, quote, always choose climbing over a lady. And we get more background on how he got into soloing as a kid who was too afraid to ask other people to climb with him. So if we look at steps 1 and 2 together, this is called the platform of your story. The platform is what our story is built on. And it's important to establish a platform because if we don't understand the status quo, we don't have any reference point from which to understand the change that will take place in the story. All right, let's go to step 3, until one day. This is the inciting incident. It is the moment that sets your story in motion and throws the status quo off kilter. It's a trigger event that will change things for good or for the bad, depending on the story you're telling. In Free Solo, there are 2 things happening simultaneously. The first is that Alex decides that he is going to solo El Cap. But perhaps the bigger until one day moment in this film is that his girlfriend, Sani, moves into the van with him. This all happens at about the 17-minute mark in the movie. Okay, step 4, because of that. Here is where we start to see the consequences and the ripple effects of the inciting incident. As your characters face challenges and make choices, their actions set off a chain of cause and effect events that propel the story forward. So there are ups, there are downs, it's a roller coaster. One of the hallmarks of this section is that the external and internal forces are constantly holding the character back from achieving their goal. In Free Solo, for example, the first because of that is at the 20-minute mark after Alex's new girlfriend, Sonny, moves in. We see a bit of their cohabitation, and Alex says that Sonny pretty much makes life better in every way. But then in the next scene, while out climbing with Sonny, she loses control of the rope and Alex falls and gets injured. The injury not only derails his training for El Cap, but also his belief that he can accomplish what he wants to as a climber while also having a romantic partner. Step 5, because of that. Here we have more cascading events and more obstacles that the characters face on their journey to achieve their desires. The middle of the story is, as I said, this roller coaster of this happens, then this happens, then this happens. It can be that simple, or if you want to get more nuanced, the best stories make sure that the scenes are related to the characters' needs and desires. For more on character needs and desires, check out my video on 7 steps of character development in stories that is linked in the description. All right, in Free Solo, there are tons of because of that's. But the next big one is at about the 45-minute mark as Alex works on the hardest sections of the route as his relationships deepen with his girlfriend and his friends who are filming, all of whom are terrified that he might die. That tension is really at the heart of this section. Step 6, because of that. All right, don't worry, this is the last of the because of that steps. Here, the story continues to escalate and the stakes continue to rise as we head towards the story's climax. In Free Solo, this happens at the hour mark when Alex makes his first attempt to solo El Cap and ends up bailing just as he was getting going. He says, "I don't know if I can try this while everyone is watching. It's too scary." His confidence is shaken. And we see that as his relationship strengthens with his girlfriend and his friends who are filming, maybe that's gonna prevent him from accomplishing his climbing goal. That leads us to step 7, until finally. This is the climax. This is where the story has been heading all along. It is the emotional high point of your story where the stakes are at their highest and the characters confront their most significant internal and external obstacles. So for Alex in Free Solo, it is his free solo attempt of El Cap, culminating with Alex telling Sonny over the phone once he reaches the top of the mountain that he loves her. And 8, ever since that day. This final element brings the story to a close and establishes the character's new status quo. This should be directly linked to the platform of steps 1 and 2, allowing us to see how the character has changed. In Free Solo, Alex starts the movie as an isolated climber solely focused on professional success, viewing deep relationships as an impediment to his climbing ambition. But at the end, he accomplishes his greatest climbing achievement ever, while also revealing that he is in love, perhaps his greatest emotional achievement ever. And the last lines of the movie, he says, quote, "Maybe I don't need to keep charging ahead." He says someone is gonna think of something cooler and harder to climb, but he doesn't know if it's gonna be him. And it leaves us with a little bit of a doubt and a wonder of whether he will continue free soloing. But it also suggests that maybe he has found some sort of peace in his life that he didn't have at the beginning of the story. And step number 9, the moral of the story is. This isn't technically in the story spine, but I love to add it in there because it challenges me as a documentarian to think about what the deeper meaning of the story is that I'm working on. The moral isn't typically said explicitly in films. It's actually more commonly said explicitly when you're working in the world of audio documentaries, like This American Life stories. They'll often say at the end of the stories, like, this is what the story all means. But that doesn't really work in film the same way. Either way, I just wanted to mention this step because I think that it's helpful to think about. Okay, so that's the story spine. A simple framework that can yield powerful results. You've seen how it maps onto a major film like Free Solo. Now, let's look at a smaller example. I'm about to show you a 6-minute short documentary, and as we watch it, we're gonna break down how the story spine maps onto it. This short doc is one of the first I ever made, so be kind. Be kind to it and be kind to me. It always feels a little bit cringe-worthy showing work from years ago, but I'm leaning into that cringe because I think it's a really instructive example for early career filmmakers. I made this short about 8 years ago, and to my surprise, it got published by some of the most reputable digital short film showcases and film festivals around the country. This story literally jump-started my career as not only a solid portfolio piece, but also by allowing me to say that my work had been featured in places like National Geographic, The Atlantic, on television nationally via NBC. And I think a huge reason it was so successful, even though I was just starting out, was because I followed the story spine so directly, as you'll see. So let's watch, and as we go, we're going to map it together. All right, we got the story spine over here, video over here. Let's map it.
I was born in Eastern Province, eastern part of Zambia, in 1966. I was a driver as well as a carpenter.
All right, so there we go. Once upon a time starts it off. First sentences, I'm jumping into that. Once upon a time, we know that he lived in Eastern Zambia, was a driver. We know that we're in his home. So likely in Zambia. Okay, let's keep it going.
I loved the most especially moving up and down because I knew so many places as a driver. I really enjoyed the job.
Okay, so every day we know he was a driver, loved it, loved driving. Something, seemed like loved the freedom of it. Knew, going up and down all around, just enjoyed that job as a driver. We also saw just in the way that little section was shot, we had the poster of Jesus in his home. So maybe you can assume that he is religious.
When I was 34 years, my life changed forever.
Okay, so when I was 34 years old, my life changed forever. He is literally almost saying the exact words of the story spine until one day, and then when I was 34, my life changed forever. I mean, he is delivering that line. Amazing.
That day, I saw a blister developed on the left leg. After some hours, it was another blister on the other leg. And then my legs turned black. I went to hospital. They discovered that gas gangrene. That's a disease I was affected with. And then the doctors just decided for this man to survive, you just have to amputate both legs.
Okay, so until one day, when he says his life changed forever, the next visual moment that you see is him rolling out of his home in his wheelchair with no legs. So until one day, that immediately starts it. He tells that little anecdote that he had gangrene and had to get both of his legs amputated. Okay, let's move on.
It pained me. I nearly committed suicide. I thought that my life has ended. I'll never drive again. I'll never do my carpentry job.
Okay, so the first because of that, nearly committed suicide, depressed, hints that depression was caused by not being able to do the things that he loved, like driving and carpentry work.
But through God's mercy and then the support of some religious people, I came back to my senses. I just had to accept to say, let it be the way it's supposed to be. After being amputated, I can no longer drive, but I used my carpentry skill to do the carpentry job. One day, my friend asked me to do this carpentry job at his workshop. Zambian Association for Children with Disabilities. This association deals with mobility aid for children with disabilities. I was really touched one time when I went around the children wards to see young children face some difficulties how to move. I was so touched, so that I've got that skill to make them wooden crutches to help them to move here and there.
All right, so our second because of that was hired to start using his carpentry skills to hand make devices for children with disabilities. And it seems like that's like plot generated. If we think about his internal, because of that, he's starting to gain a little bit more confidence of the value that he can provide the world. Maybe he can't drive people around, but at least this way he can give people mobility in just a little bit different way. So learning he can provide mobility to others. Okay, let's keep it going.
I can do it, despite the way I am. I can still help them so that they don't feel depressed or they don't feel bad the way they are. From 8 to 16:30, making some crutches, some braces, special chairs, and then standing frames. D5 says for children with disabilities. Okay. Like that. Listen. Sende mumsikia. Utazimvera ile mpaka ndio kupola kwa kaena. Because backbone itaonongeka kali mwana. When I see a child using the crutches I make, I feel very good. And when I see a child putting on some braces, I really praise God because He's the one who gives me strength to make those things. I know that in future, those devices I make, they can make them walk and they can make them to be perfect persons.
Okay, so then because of that, I think it just is, another cascading. We have the scene where he's helping them with the brace, like the body brace, and then the clubfoot braces, and again continues building for kids. Really proud of value. And the line that always kind of haunts me a little bit is he says, I can make them become perfect persons, which is kind of like this bittersweet line because he's so proud of what he's able to offer others through his skills. But it also kind of reveals that he still does look at himself as not perfect because, he doesn't have the ability to walk. So there's kind of that emotional tension in that moment.
I always make some devices for children with disabilities, but I feel and I believe one day someone is going to do wonders for me again, like making some artificial limbs for me to stand and run and do whatever a normal person can do.
So maybe we'll add there, he has this belief, and I think it's tied into his religious identity, belief that maybe one day someone will be able to offer him the same kind of service that he offers other people. Believe that maybe one day he will be able to walk like he is helping others do.
And now that dream has come true, I'm very excited about it. There's an organization called 500 miles, which have supported me to buy me some artificial limbs. I know that one day I'll drive again.
Okay, so until finally, and we're in the midst of this until finally right now, but he is getting artificial limbs that will allow him to drive, and as he says, or hopes, and hopefully be able to drive again.
Life can change anytime, and you have to accept it the way it comes to you. I urge people who can be found in the situation I am to have that heart of accepting whatever can happen to them. Have that heart of prayer every time, because things can change anytime.
You want to make some steps?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
This there, and then come back. Life is like a ball game, because there are ups and downs in life. So you just have to accept the way things come to you.
Okay. So then if we look at ever since that day, it's a little bit similar to the free solo example, I guess. It's like I didn't do a whole, now his life after getting the prosthetics, it's a little bit unknown. It's a little bit like I show that kind of last shot of him walking. You can see how slow that movement is. And it's kind of begging the question of how does his life return to normal? How long does it take? I think it hints that, he's going to be able to walk again. He's able to walk again, and get some freedom or return to, a sense of freedom that his identity was based around at the beginning of the story. And then the moral of the story, this is one example where the character in the film really kind of expressed the moral of the story. The life is like a ball game because there are ups and downs in life. You have to accept the way things come to you. Again, he says, have a heart of accepting. So I think that's really the moral of the story is like the ups and downs of life and having an accepting heart. Ups and downs of life and having an accepting heart. And there you go. That's a 6-minute short film. You have these, 8 to 9 steps. They all happen very quickly, but you can see how you tie them together, that it's possible to tell a pretty well-rounded short film in a short amount of time if you kind of just like follow this template. And, I'm very grateful to David for letting me into his life to tell his story and for, telling it so, in such a compelling way. So grateful for him and grateful for the Story Spine for helping guide this production. So that's the Story Spine. If you are interested in diving deeper into story, check out this video, which goes into how to structure stories from more of a character-centered lens. Honestly, I think it's a great companion video to this one because Story Spine is more about external events in the world of story, whereas this video is more about internal character development over the course of story. Okay, I'll see you next week. Go out and tell some stories.